So what are the most important components of a fundraising strategy? When you set out to raise money, it's not kind of just a random event. It should be a deliberate process. So what are the most important components? First is you have to understand what your financing needs and your cash needs are. So where are you today and where are you trying to get to given your ultimate cash needs? Okay. Secondly is what are the major milestones that you hope to achieve when you're bringing in this capital? So you say, okay, I have these financing needs. These are my cash needs because I'm trying to achieve these particular milestones. You want to lay out those milestones specifically, and we're going to get into some of those details. And then next is, right, how do you create the right plan to achieve those milestones? Okay, so we're going to talk about each of those components, right? So now let's talk about, given that understanding of what those major elements are, let's talk about what we mean by milestones. Okay, milestones ultimately impact the valuation of your company, right? So if you've achieved milestones or if you've shown that you have the propensity to achieve milestones, that can get you higher valuations of your company. So you almost think of building a company as a series of steps and stages. And if you're ultimately able to achieve certain milestones, that makes your company more valuable. So what do we mean by those milestones, right? One of the most important milestones is traction with customers, right? Do you have actual paying customers, right, that are paying for your product or service, okay? Nothing is a better indicator of your future success than the ability to get existing customers, especially when you don't have all the capital and resources that you have. So getting traction with customers, however you define that, is a really key important milestone that has to be part of your fundraising strategy. Another milestone is a repeatable sales model. And what we mean by that is the ability to sell something where you're not reinventing the wheel every time. If you think about when somebody makes a car, right? They have an assembly line. They're making the same car over and over and over again with slight changes, right? They're not reinventing it every time. If you think about a software company that builds this software and then ultimately makes that software available, right? It's repeatable. So the more that you can demonstrate that your sales model is repeatable, right? That is a key milestone in building a company. And that's often difficult at early stages of a company because you're chasing customers all over the place, you're looking for revenue all over the place, but can you demonstrate that you've created a model that is repeatable and scalable? Other types of milestones, right? Hiring a great team, right? So that might be obviously the work that you put into it, but it also might be others. Like you might say, I'm going to go out and get a really strong head of sales. You might even say, I'm going to get an experienced CEO to work side by side with me. You might say that I'm brought in a very key technology leader. So bring in other experienced team members can really have a positive impact on your fundraising strategy. Other things are break even or cash flow positive, right? If you've gotten to your company without outside investment or very much of it to the point where you're not losing cash, right? Where you're breaking even from a profitability perspective or you're generating cash and not burning it, those are key milestones for investors to look at that can have an impact on your financing strategy. Okay. Another one is obviously becoming a leader in a particular market. In my case, when we had started our business around rewards in healthcare, there was no one else talking about it. While I would hardly call us the market leader at the time, we were really the only ones in the early 2000s who were talking about that concept. So all of these different types of milestones can have a really key impact on your financing strategy and on the valuation of your company. One of the reasons why milestones are so important is they reduce risk for investors. And there's different types of risks that investors are trying to address when valuing your company, right? And this has to be built into your financing strategy. First is customer risk. So that basically means, okay, I'm going to put money into a company and ultimately I hope that product or service is going to resonate with a consumer or a business, but I don't know. There's a risk there. So to the extent that you've gotten traction with customers, you're actually reducing and mitigating that risk for investors, okay? Next is technology risk. To the extent that you've built up a certain amount of technology, perhaps you've built up a technology leadership team or a group of technologists within your company that have a track record, that reduces the risk that somebody's going to kind of write a check to your company and then you've got to go build something, right? And they don't know if across that process you're going to build it right, you're going to build it on budget, you're going to build it as fast as you'd like to build it. So those are all risks for investors. So if you've advanced your technology to a certain point, right, that certainly reduces the risk for investors. In addition to those risks, you have business model risks. So, what is your pricing model? How are you going to ultimately go to market? And in an early stage company, you don't necessarily know whether your pricing model is going to be the right pricing model. So to the extent that you can show traction with customers, that people are buying your product or service, right? If you think about it, email's free. Email was given away in the early .com days as a freebie, and today it's free, right? Who would have ever thought we have this great service that we use every minute of every day that is free? So how you go to market and how something gets priced, to the extent that you can show that there's traction in the marketplace for that and acceptance with customers, that also is reducing that risk of your, quote unquote business model, can be key in part of your fundraising strategy. So when you think about these elements of your fundraising strategy, what it really comes down to is not, am I going to change the world? But how do I align to these types of key milestones, right? And so to the extent that I've already achieved them, or to the extent that I have a very clear and credible plan about how and when I'm going to achieve them, that's what gives investors comfort, right? So if you say to an investor, yes, I've got a plan to have this many customers in a year, and I had a plan to have my technology done to this extent in a year, all of those things, the more credible the plan and the more you've achieved those milestones already, the easier it is for an investor to say, yep, this is something I really want to invest in. Okay? These are just the high-level elements of a financing strategy that you have to really think about. And there's much more information side by side with this video inside this lesson.